I'm gonna have to reread and review Secret Invasion pretty soon. Seeing that, I believe the TV show comes out, is it this week on Disney Plus? Not a plug, not a sponsor. Yeah, pretty sure Secret Invasion comes out pretty soon. I should really be up on these things. I really enjoyed the comic book a lot when it came out back in the Disney. And clearly there's going to be a lot of changes from the source material to the TV screens. But man, I'm hoping that they can at least kind of capture the essence of what made that comic book so much fun. It seems like they're going back to more of a serious tone, kind of like a Captain America Winter Soldier movie vibe. But I feel that Disney has been trying to recapture that since Winter Soldier. I feel like they tried and maybe didn't quite hit the landing with Black Widow, and then they tried again with Falcon and Winter Soldier, and again didn't really hit that mark. But man, I don't know what to really expect with this TV show. There's going to be a lot of Nick Fury in this TV show, a lot of Sam Jackson, which I'm always cool to see more Sam Jackson. The issue is that I'm pretty sure that the Nick Fury character isn't in the book. Yeah, he's definitely MIA during this time frame, and Maria Hill is the one who's in charge of Shield during this time in the comic books. But anyways, uh, that's gonna be something for a future episode. Definitely coming up pretty soon, as well as the actual review and breakdown of these Secret Invasion TV episodes. Comic book media right now really needs a win. You feel me? Like, I feel that the state of comic books and television and in movies, um, we're not at a shortage of anything. Like, we have plenty of superhero media to consume, but man, I feel like we're kind of taking a beating right now in terms of wins versus losses. How many of these have been just exceptionally good, and how many of these have been just good or just okay, just watchable or worse. Which kind of leads into tonight's discussion. And as you can tell by the title of this is primarily about the Flashpoint story. And the Flashpoint story is one that I think is kind of I consider it a modern day classic. It came out back in 2011. And I think that we've had several quote unquote modern day classics within the past, 12, 13 years or so. And this is only a 5 issue event, right? So I'm going to be talking about this in a nutshell, but I'm also going to be talking about the lead up to Flashpoint. And you never guess, but that's called The Road to Flashpoint. And then even before that, I'm going to be speaking about the Reverse Flash one shot comic book, simply titled Reverse Flash Rebirth. Really good one shot, kind of chronicling the origin of good old Eobard Thawne. And so that's going to be a lot of fun here, I think. Reading a lot of comics, sometimes a lot of shit slips through the cracks. And then sometimes when you least suspect it, you be reading something and then you realize, not only have I read this before, but yeah, I remember everything that now happens. It's kind of like a little folder, right? Just shoved into the back of your brain, and then every once in a while, the shit comes to the light. Uh, but before we get started into things and get this podcast started proper, Craven the Hunter trailer recently dropped. Um, yeah, so that's the whole thing, guys. Check out the Craven the Hunter trailer. I really want this movie to be good because, again, I feel that superhero movies need a strong W in the win column. I don't know if this is going to be the one. I don't know if we're going to get another great superhero movie this year. It, the optimist in me says that, hey, you never know. I could be surprised, and there could be just some bangers coming out later on this year. I believe Aquaman 2 is still slated to come out, as well as Blue Beetle and Kraven the Hunter. I think the Marvels once again has been pushed back again. So we'll see whenever that comes out. The only reason I bring up Kraven the Hunter is because, like I said earlier, the trailer just came out, and with the release of the trailer, there's obviously new information about this movie. It was funny for me because when the trailer first opens, we hear this gruff, deep European voice speaking, with obvious accent, and I'm thinking, man, that is a good Craven voice, and it wasn't Craven; it was Craven's dad. So it was not Sergei Kravinoff; it was whatever his dad's name is, Mister Sergei Kravinoff. I don't know, and it was Russell Crowe, uh, and Aaron Taylor Johnson, who was playing Craven, just has I don't know, what is that, an American accent, just vague plain American accent. I don't know. I couldn't place it, but it was jarring for me to hear that and then try to associate him with Craven because Craven definitely has that accent. The way that Russell Crowe sounded is kind of how Craven should sound in this movie. But if the voice were the only thing that would the issue I have with this trailer, then we'd be fine. But unfortunately, that's not the only problem I had with the trailer. There's I'm gonna take a step back here. If we look at it like this, the first tie-in to Flashpoint that we're gonna talk about is the Reverse Flash one shot, correct? And it is Reverse Flash Rebirth. And the reason why I'm suddenly jumping to this, just as a reference point for this Craven movie, is because that one shot does something that I really wish Hollywood would try to take a cue from, would try to adapt a little bit, and that is this one shot gives us kind of the origin of Eobard Thawne and his journey to becoming the Reverse Flash, and it gives us more of his childhood and his upbringing and why he is the way that he is. But above all else, he is the main character, and what Jeff Johns, who's the writer of that book, really wants you to know is that Reverse Flash is a dick. He's a giant dickhead, and above all else, if you don't take anything else from the story, it should be that he's an asshole. So at no point do they try to make you sympathize with him. At no point do they try to make you feel like you can relate to him, and at no point do they lighten his character or introduce a even worse character so that you like him by proxy. There's none of that in this book. It is telling you how he became who he is and the idea of which one did him dirtier, nature or nurture, and how did this man become this evil dickhead that we all know him to be. That is what that one-shot comic book is about. In relation to this Craven movie, and I'm picking on the Craven movie because this isn't the only superhero movie that's done so, and there's going to be others that would do it, and there's been other movies that have done it, such as, to a lesser degree, the Venom movies and also Morbius, but even beyond the Fox movies, the Joker movie with Joaquin Phoenix. The issue here that I'm talking about is they always have to a degree, sacrifice the integrity of these characters and these Hollywood writers who really don't understand the nuance of these characters or the importance of these characters' personalities. They get their hands on these scripts, screenplays, and when they write these things, they always try to humanize even more so these villainous characters. And they do so in an attempt for the audience to be more attracted to them, to see themselves in them. Because I guess in their minds, if the main characters are complete and utter irredeemable dickbags, then why would anyone want to go and see them? But the issue is this. The issue is that when you do that, you are severely breaking superhero homies rule number one, which is character integrity. And that is so important. So important. And again, with characters like Venom or Morbius, yeah, I get it. They don't remain villains. And there's ample opportunity for them to kind of rework them to make them more palatable for both comic book readers and audience or casual audience members. But they have to start at a place where they are at least villain like before we can truly appreciate them when they make that face turn. That's all I'm saying. So yeah, the Craven trailer. There's some fun looking action in the trailer. They really show off the R rating in that, and I think that that's going to be maybe where most of the fun in this trailer comes from. They do this goofy thing, however, and I don't want to spoil anything. By the way, if you guys haven't seen the trailer, I guess it's too late for that. But you can go ahead and hit that fast forward button a couple times here, and then we're gonna get things started properly. But man, he gets in this trailer. Okay, he gets attacked by a giant goddamn lion, and it. I mean, he's a little kid, right, in the trailer when he gets attacked by this lion, and this thing should probably rip his intestines out in 0.07 seconds, something like that. It doesn't though. Somehow he survives this fucking mauling from a big ass lion. But no, not only that, the way he gets his powers, it looks like it's implied that a drop of the lion's blood gets into an open wound of Craven's, and the lion's blood. It seems like that is what causes Craven to get his powers. And listen, I'm not going to say that what happens in the comic books is any less goofy, but it is certainly more fleshed out and I think overall better. Uh, I just, I just need a win. I need a win. You know what I mean? I think that we really hit some good momentum with Guardians Volume 3 and Across the Spider-Verse. I mean, I think that those are probably undoubtedly the two best superhero movies that will come out this year. But who knows? Maybe there'll be something even better. I just don't see that being Craven. But with that being said, maybe I'll do a proper trailer breakdown of that if you guys want to see that or hear that. And yeah, we'll move on from here. So with that being said, homies one and all, welcome back to another very special episode of the Superhero Homies podcast. My name is Quentin, and tonight or today, whatever time you're listening to this, you have the honor, the pleasure, and the privilege of just getting me to yourselves. So with that being said, guys, there will be a small spoiler section at the end of this episode, and that will be me really talking about how these comic books stack up to the movie, The Flash, and where changes were made where maybe there shouldn't have been, or maybe changes that they should have made to the movies to make it more akin to the comic books. More about the Reverse Flash or the villains, things of that nature. We're going to be talking about all of that at the end of this podcast. But before we get things started too much, I do want to also talk about, and there won't be any spoilers right here for the Flash movie, but in certain regards, I will be talking just briefly about that because there are some things that need to be said. First and foremost, if you guys have not as of yet seen the movie, no worries. Again, I won't spoil anything here, but I do highly suggest you guys go and listen to the Flash review on this very podcast. This is just a few episodes ago, maybe just one episode ago, actually. And on that review, I was privileged enough to have 3 of my close friends join me on this podcast to review that movie. And so you get not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4 opinions from 4 very distinct people. And that was a lot of fun. And I'm grateful that they were all able to join me for that one. That was a very interesting review for a very interesting movie. And there's been a lot of news coming out about the Flash movie since then. And a lot of it, I think, is maybe the director. I think his name is Andy Muschietti. I think a lot of it is him trying to cover up, trying to make excuses for things that just didn't pan out. Ultimately, my biggest problem with the Flash movie, well, there's two big problems. One is the inexcusable CG, which Andy Muschietti, the director, says was intentional. That's how Barry apparently views things while in the Flash or while in the Speed Force, according to Andy. I think it's just, I mean, as the kids say, that's 100% cap. That's a bold faced bullshit ass lie. In no universe is the CG supposed to look like that. And I think if I'm Andy, I would just own up to that. The truth of the matter is that they were still doing reshoots, we know, up to a certain degree. And we also know that there was a lot of money already spent on this movie. I mean, after all the pushbacks and after all the multiple reshoots, and I mean, after having sessions of this movie gutted and then refilmed and whatnot, I don't know the exact number, but I wouldn't be surprised if this was a $250 million movie after marketing and after marketing again from it being pushed back repeatedly. I mean, from top to bottom, this movie was just a nightmare. And then Ezra was a PR nightmare. So it would be, it was going to be, they were fighting an uphill battle for damn near a year now, you know. So they really put themselves in a sticky situation and in a tough predicament. But what I personally think happened with the CG, and this isn't me making excuses for them, this is me trying to understand how the hell they could release something that looks like that and think that it's okay. I mean, the CG in this movie makes Thor: Love and Thunder look like, you know, a fucking photorealistic masterpiece. But I think that the issue is simply there was no more money and there was no more time. They were not going to push the movie back again. And even if they wanted to, I don't think that David Zaslav was going to allocate any more money to that movie. They had already sank so much money into it. I don't see them sinking any more, not a dollar more into that movie. And so what we got is what we got. And what we got was an unrendered, incomplete mess in terms of the visuals. Now, what about the story, which is what we're really here to talk about, right? In terms of the story, I read the quote from Andy Muschietti on the Flash Review, so you guys can, again, check that out. But in that quote, I'm just going to paraphrase here. He was asked about the changes that were made from the comic books, and to his credit, the movie is called The Flash. It is not called Flashpoint. However, to anyone who was familiar with the Flashpoint story, even from just watching the trailers, it's very clear that this movie is taking heavy influence from the Flashpoint story. And basically, Andy's reasoning for the changes were that subverting expectations is kind of what I gathered from reading his quote. He essentially wanted people to not know where the story was going, and to enjoy the story as it unfolds in its own unique direction. It's more or less what he was saying, which all boils down to wanting to subvert expectations. I don't understand why you change it. Is the problem here. And this is a problem that's not just with The Flash. This is a problem with a lot of comic book movies. I don't know if it's hubris, thinking that comic books are a lower form of entertainment and that they can do better. I don't know if that's part of the issue. I don't know if it is from the higher ups, the executive producers, the people who dole out the money to make these movies, if they want to make certain changes, and then it's just orders coming from the top down. I don't know. But what I do know is that 9 times out of 10, scratch that, 9.75 times out of 10, whenever you have a story that you're adapting and you make changes from the source material, it will not be as good as the comic book. It just is what it is. Uh, I don't make the rules on that, but that's just how it is. And it is unfortunate, right? It's not saying that it can't be a good movie. It just won't be as great as it could be. So I do wish that The Flash was a better movie. Uh, I myself did not hate it. I had a good time watching it. As soon as I was allowing myself to get past the mind melting CG, I was able to actually enjoy the movie and have a really good time with it. And again, like I said earlier, I'm not here to re-review the movie. We spent a whole 2 hours doing that. So again, go check that out. First half of that review is spoiler free. Second half is spoiler filled. You guys know the routine. But there were just certain things that had me questioning why were these changes made and why were certain elements left out. And again, like I said, there will be a spoiler free section here at the very end of this. But to start things off, guys, let's talk about this Reverse Flash one shot. And let's get down to the mystery of why is Eobard Thawne such a dick? Have you guys thought about that yet? Okay, good. Here we go. So Eobard was born in the 25th century. Thawne is the result of some genetic modifications similar to what's that shit called? CRISPR. Have you guys heard of that? CRISPR is a gene editing tool. And the reason why some of you may have not heard of that is I'm pretty sure this shit is just like, first of all, it's still in like its infant stages. I think like right now you can use it to like alter the eye color or the hair color of your kids, and I think that's about the extent of it, right? But the interesting thing about this CRISPR technology is that first of all, I'm sure that only the super duper fucking filthy ass rich people can even afford to use this shit, and also then there's like the moral implications of it. Like, is this really moral to alter someone's genetics? To any kind of varying degrees, and then where do you put the line in that at? But anyways, I was really thinking about that when I was reading this because Eobard, he seems to have a similar kind of scenario going on with him, and the way that it's written here it really makes it feels like it's kind of commonplace. And by the way, this entire one shot is being narrated by Thawne himself, and I thought that this entire thing was fascinating. So he starts off, as a little kid, and he says everything from his strawberry blonde hair to his, 167 IQ, that was all due to gene editing. Basically, is what he says, which for me was just so fascinating. And I wish that it was more than a one shot because I would love to see more of the society of Central City in this far flung future. So at this point, there are no speedsters. There are no flashes. There is no speed force. And as a matter of fact, most people consider it to be some sort of myth or a legend. But there's still a lot of people who do wonder about the Flash. Did the Flash really exist? How can we tap into the speed force? What is it that powered the Flash? A lot of these questions are kind of a real thing. And again, I wish I knew more about the society of the people in the 25th century because there is a Flash museum, right? And I assume it's got to be the same Flash museum that exists in modern day Central City. And for those of you who aren't familiar, the Flash Museum is essentially a place where a lot of the Flash's kind of his trinkets or his trophies or like things from his rogue gallery, they're all kept there on display for people to see and recognize. And this is a way for people to kind of give the Flash his flowers while he's here, quote unquote, even though, obviously in the future, the Flash is not there. But that's the idea of the Flash Museum when it was created in modern day Central City, was for people to kind of get to know the Flash as much as they could and to appreciate him and all of his efforts. He and and this Flash fam. But yeah, so I guess my question is, if that's the same Flash museum, then clearly there should be no question that there was a Scarlet Speedster, right? Like, why would you guys even question if the Flash existed if you have a goddamn museum that says he existed? I don't know, man, but maybe it's like finding like a super old, you know, religious temple of sorts. We're like, yeah, we have this religious temple and people perform ceremonies here, but that doesn't mean that everything they did was, on the up and up. Maybe, they thought that they were, I don't know, actually worshiping whoever. I'm making a vague analogy here that I think ties together, but it's different. You guys get what I'm saying, though. The Flash Museum, though, is still a thing in the future, but it looks to be maybe it's a place where people do research now. It's not a place where people really go to appreciate the Flash. It's more of a place where people go to do research now about the Speed Force. That's more the use of the Flash Museum in the 25th century. But the interesting thing here about Eobard is that even when Thawne was a kid, he was really, really strict with his time. But that wasn't because of him. That wasn't really his decision. This is the society that these people live in. The world that these people live in is very much based about time and decision making and what you do with that time. Everything is so structured and micromanaged down to, they don't say this, but it's not even implied, but you can assume that even down to, man, you took an extra 2 minutes taking that shit. That shit should have taken you 5 minutes and 14 seconds. You spent 7 minutes and 19 seconds on that shit. That is going to cost you X amount of time down the line because you took too long to pinch off that last turd. We told you to drink more probiotics. We told you to get more fiber, and now look at you. You're wasting time. The way that these people speak and the way that they communicate with each other, it all implies that they are so focused on time utilage. And Thawne is a dreamer. He has an imagination. He has dreams and he has goals. There's reason to believe that Thawne maybe didn't have the best childhood. And again, going back to the nature versus nurture debate, you do wonder how much of this is because of his relationship with his parents and how much of this is because he was just born fucking rude, to put it lightly. I don't know, like, by technical definitions, murderers are rude, but that's not all they are. Anywho, even though Thawne had such a high IQ and apparently did really well in school, his parents still saw fit to have another child. And the reason they wanted another child, according to Thawne, was because it was able to give his parents another tax break and because they really thought that this would help Thawne develop better social skills. And so that was the whole idea here. They wanted another kid for a tax break and to help their oldest child be more sociable. Because apparently Eobard was not very sociable at all. He was just kind of you guys have met those people in school, right? They're the ones who are very socially awkward. Like the people who are socially awkward and mean as fuck at the same time. You guys ever met those people? That's Thawne. School in this far-flung fictional future, that was a fucking tongue twister. They are very obviously they're very structured, but the way that they do schooling here is kind of interesting. They actually don't attend school physically, but via a VR headset that places them all in a virtual classroom where they're all moving with, I guess, kind of avatars of themselves. And that's how they participate in school. If I had to guess, Eobard's younger brother is probably, again, I'm just guessing here, I'd probably say that Eobard is probably at minimum 5 to 8 years older than his little brother. Uh, and this is where things for me really start to get interesting here with this one shot. Besides setting up the lay of the land here and understanding how important time structure is to the society, where things get interesting is where Thawne's desires and his passions kind of start to peak, and we kind of learn more about what this guy really wants. So he wants to be able to study more. He wants to be able to learn as much as he can. The problem is that he's so fucking awkward, my G. He's kind of the worst. And because of that, he has to do other things that draws him away from his studies. So for example, he wants to go and participate in other activities that some of the other students are getting to do, and they're teasing him because Thawne has to go early, leave his class and his studies early, so that he can go take his brother to a social bonding class. Apparently, that's just how socially awkward Thawne is. And we see that one day it's up to Thawne to take his little brother to this social bonding class. And his little brother, again, is probably, if I had to guess, 4 or 5 years old. And his little brother, Roburn is his name, he's throwing a fucking tantrum. I mean, that's little kids are prone to do, I suppose. Thawne doesn't handle it very well, though, because you get the idea that Thawne was never really excited or happy to have a little brother. He doesn't want one, and this little brother is wasting his precious time. There's a whole situation that causes Thawne to explode verbally at his little brother. His father is alerted and is very upset and disappointed in Eobard because you're wasting my time, son. And he says, I'm going to put this in the family log. I'm like, I don't know what the fuck that means, but damn, Pops, that sounds excessive. Anywho, Thawne is behind in his studies comparatively to where he wants to be, right? So because he's spending so much other time during these social experiments or these bonding classes with his little brother, it causes him in the long term to be behind. It cost him precious time that he could have spent learning and researching. So what ends up happening is he does not get accepted into the one place he really wants to be, and that is as a researcher in the Flash Museum. Like I said earlier, the Flash Museum at this point is pretty much reserved for researchers, and there's a head professor, and that is the most prestigious position at the Flash Museum, and that is what Eobard wants more than anything, is that position. So not only is he not the professor, he can't even get in to the Flash Museum. And the reason why that's so important to Thawne is because the only way to legally study the Speed Force is to be a researcher at the Flash Museum. So that puts Eobard in a pickle. We fast forward a few years here, and Eobard is still a fucking crotchety old young man, and he can't get into the Flash Museum to study, and so against the law, he begins to do his own research anyway because he's fascinated with the Flash, especially Barry Allen. He is flabbergasted at the man. For some reason, he really wants to learn more, but he wants to be like the Flash. You get that feeling from Eobard pretty soon. And what ends up happening is that his younger brother, who is now quite big, they're both adults here at this point in the book. So there's been quite a few years that's passed by, and they're both adults. His brother is apparently a police officer in this far-flung fictional future. And his brother says to Eobard, "You're lucky that it was me that caught you. You know that you're not supposed to be studying this. You're not supposed to be doing research on the Flash or the Speed Force, blah, blah, blah." And Eobard explodes again verbally at his brother and says, "Do you have any idea how much time you've costed me? You've costed me, X amount of days in research, blah, blah, blah." And admittedly, Thawne could have handled this better. You know, you shouldn't just yell at people, especially people for doing their job. But the way his brother reacts makes me think that his brother has a different set of problems altogether. I think that the whole Thawne family is kind of fucked up. You know, that's kind of the feeling that I get from reading this. But what we see happening here is that Thawne is, or Eobard, he is then like fucking backhanded to hell from his baby brother, his big baby brother. Roburn is way bigger than Eobard. Like it's not even close. And he smacks the fuck out of his big brother. And Roburn tells him that, hey, listen, don't make me do it again. I don't want to get anyone else here. Just don't resist. Come with me. So it looks like he's gonna actually take his his big brother to jail. Eobard's gonna go to jail, being arrested by his own little brother, his own little big brother. But before we can find out what exactly would have happened in the situation, we see this look of pure malice and vitriol on the face of Eobard. And then behind Roburn, we see this figure cloaked in yellow with glowing red eyes that comes up behind Roburn and attacks him. And again, remember that Eobard is narrating this entire story. On the next panel, we see Eobard again taking his story from the beginning, and he says, "I was an only child." I'm gonna let you sit on that for a moment. So now he was an only child instead of being a child with a sibling. So him having a brother never happened. So I'll let you guys make guesses as to who could have possibly been the man in yellow with the glowing red eyes and what could have possibly happened to his brother. I just spent the past 15 minutes talking about Roburn, a little brother, but now Eobard is saying that he never had a brother. No one acknowledges that there was a brother. His parents don't acknowledge that he had a son. This just never fucking happened now. And I think you guys can figure out what happened, but obviously we'll get more into that later on. So what we see next is he now has the time to do all the studying and researching that he wants to do because he's not tethered to this younger sibling that slowed him down because he never had a brother now. So because there never was a little brother, Thawne is free to do what he wants to do. And he has his nose in the books. There's a professor, right? And his name is Professor Blake, I believe. And Professor Blake is interesting because he is the head professor at the. No, I said Blake Drake. It's Professor Drake, not to be confused with the rapper. But Professor Drake is the head researcher at the Flash Museum, and Eobard has now had the opportunity to work at the Flash Museum as a researcher. And when you know it, even though Eobard has had more time now to study and to learn and to prepare and to get into the Flash Museum, which is great, this Professor Drake, he's finally done it. He's cracked the code. They hold a meeting at the Flash Museum, a big conference, and Professor Drake announces he's figured it out. He's learned how to tap into the Speed Force. By going through the chronicles at the Flash Museum, he learned how to replicate and rebuild the cosmic treadmill. Sidebar: the cosmic treadmill sounds ridiculous, that's because it is, but once you learn how to get into comic book pseudoscience, it's actually quite a fun and useful invention for Barry Allen. So the Speed Force is not like the negative Speed Force. There are some similarities, but there's some differences. What I mean by that is Eobard Thawne, as the Reverse Flash, Using the negative speed force, this man can kind of pinpoint and go wherever he wants to in time with little to no consequences to himself. And he can kind of do this at whim whenever he wants to. Whereas Barry Allen or any of our other good speedsters using the speed force, they can't do that. It would be like trying to hit a fucking moving object going 80,000 miles per hour. Even if you have pinpoint accuracy, you might get close, but you're going to be a little bit off, which is why Barry Allen can never really time travel quite the same way. You need to be so extremely focused and tuned in. But with the cosmic treadmill, that allows Barry Allen or the other speedsters to more accurately travel to the time period that they want to. So Professor Drake has figured out a way to recreate this cosmic treadmill. Awesome. Well, awesome for most people. Eobard goes and he approaches Professor Drake one-on-one, so there's no one else around, and he goes, Professor Drake, congratulations. I think that we should exchange notes, and I think that we can really help each other out here. And Professor Drake, guys, do me a favor, just to describe to you what Professor Drake looks like. You could just look him up in the book, I guess, or you could use your imagination here and use this other descriptor as well. Look up Matter Eating Lad. Gosh, I think that was him. Was it Matter Eating Lad? There's another comic book character that I think looks a lot like this Professor Drake. It might have been Matter Eating Lad. It's like if Matter Eating Lad gained maybe 600 or so pounds. It's like Matter Eating Lad meets Fred Dukes, the Blob, from the Brotherhood of Mutants. It's like if those two kind of fuse together, that's kind of what he reminds me of. And also, what Professor Drake kind of implies to me as well is that everyone's a dick in the future. Like, there's no likable people in the 25th century. So be grateful, guys, that we live in the century that we live in now. Because come the 25th century, especially if you live in Central City, there's going to be no redeemable people there. They're all going to be kind of ambiguous dickheads. But Professor Drake shoots down Eobard's offer to work together and to compare research notes and he says, not only do I not need your help, you're not wanted here, period. Probably because Thawne creeps people the fuck out, he's probably rude as fuck. And Thawne doesn't take kindly to that. And we see that look of malice on Thawne's face again. And then once again, we see this mysterious yellow figure with red eyes. And Professor Thawne seems to be attacked. And then in the next panel, we get another interesting kind of reset. We see that not only did Eobard have time to study now because he had no little brother, time to get into the Flash Museum as a researcher. Luckily for Thawne, there's a position open for the head professor of the Flash Museum because they need a spot. So there is no Professor Drake now. He's gone. And Eobard is selected to be the professor over the Flash Museum. And because there is absolutely no one who knows more about the Speed Force than Thawne, he is aptly named Professor Zoom. Yeah, I thought that was a cool little tie-in to see how he got the name Professor Zoom. And so that's where it came from him being a professor, lead researcher at the Flash Museum. So he begins to bury his nose in the book even more so. And the lack of social skills is really starting to rear its ugly head to the point where his parents are concerned. His parents come in one day and visit him, and they have somebody else with them. It's like a social therapist of sorts to help Eobard, and he is not having any of it. His parents also tell him something that maybe Eobard has heard before, but it's just ignored. His parents tell him, "Look, you're too obsessed with this. You're too close to this whole Flash thing. You know that a lot of people think that the Flash is just an urban legend anyway. He probably didn't really exist, son. This is Doctor So and So who really wants to help you out. Please." And Eobard is not having any of that bullshit. How dare you get between him and his studies? So again, we see this mysterious yellow figure with red eyes. The next panel, Thawne is doing his research at the Flash Museum. Another officer enters the room and informs Thawne that unfortunately there's been a really bizarre weather aberration and his parents died in that weather aberration. They don't really specify what that was, but it doesn't really matter. The only thing important here is that Thawne was never visited by his parents that evening. They died. So there's that. You would think that the death of his parents would slow him down, but it doesn't. It doesn't slow him down at all. He is no Bruce Wayne, this Eobard Thawne. Definitely no Bruce Wayne. The death of his parents did nothing to this man. He continues his research, looking, searching, trying to find a way to prove the Flash's existence, but more importantly, trying to find a way to replicate this mysterious speed force. Until one day, there's a, I guess for lack of better terms, a knock at the door. The doorbell rings, something along those lines. He gets a transmitter call, kind of like a FaceTime, and he answers it, and it is from this beautiful young lady. And Thawne says that for the first time in his life, he falls in love. This lady, I believe her name is Rose, if memory serves correct. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure her name is Rose. And she is a reporter for the Central City News. And she wants to talk to Thawne, do an interview with him about his research. And Thawne is smitten with this girl. Unfortunately for Thawne, he soon discovers that she has a fiance and she is very happy, which makes Thawne very unhappy. Did I say that Rose had a fiance? She doesn't. Mysterious yellow figure, red eyes, that sound familiar. Yeah, the fiance has actually been missing for a week now. But once again, Thawne says, "This is the first time I fell in love." There is no fiance though. He's been missing. And now he gets the opportunity to do the interview. Things are going great. They're hitting it off really well. Unfortunately, he asks her out for dinner or to dinner, and she shoots him down because she is still holding out hope that her fiance, the man that she loves, is still out there, and she's going to keep looking for him. Well, this makes Thawne angry once again. Take 3. Rose never had a long-term boyfriend, and she's not a reporter either. This was the first time that Thawne has ever fallen in love. And she hopes one day to become a reporter, but maybe it'll happen. It's not like it's happened before, right? And she mentions about her bad luck, how every boyfriend she's ever had has mysteriously died or disappeared. It's kind of weird. She mentions that maybe she's bad luck. Thawne says he doesn't view her as bad luck, and he tries to make a move. My boy shoots his shot. That ball does not go swish. Nah, that's a fucking brick. That motherfucker brick like hell. She shoots him down. Rose wants nothing to do with Thawne in that capacity. She only sees him as a friend. And she pushes him off and says, I don't see you like that. Well, this makes Thawne extremely upset. She storms off and she walks away from Thawne because he made a very much unwanted move by trying to kiss this girl that wants nothing to do with him in that capacity. But as Rose is storming off, she bumps into a mysterious man in yellow with glowing red eyes. And this man grabs her by the shoulders. It's not funny. This man grabs her by the shoulders and proceeds to shake the ever-living shit out of Rose. He gives her the adult version of shaken baby syndrome. This shit is wild. I mean, he just, you know, domestic violence of any kind is not fucking cool, right? I think we all agree with that. And grabbing somebody and violently shaking them is also not fucking cool. But at least you know that if somebody shakes you, they're doing that to scare you, right? They're not actively trying to really seriously, critically hurt you. In most cases, I'd assume. But if a speedster grabs you by your shoulders and shakes the ever-living shit out of you, like Rose was shaking up, then that's got to turn your brain into a fucking milkshake. So, attempt number 3 wasn't so good. Attempt number 4. Eobard never fell in love. Rose is in a mental institution, and she's been there since she was 5 years old. Fucked up, huh? Fucked up indeed. Well, one day my boy Thawne is walking down the road moping because he just can't find a way to understand this mysterious ass speed force. So what happens? A time capsule falls in front of him. And at first he doesn't know that it's a time capsule. He thinks it's some kind of weird rocket. But upon further examination, he discovers that it is in fact a time capsule. And he's only even alerted to it at first because he hears this voice call out his name, Eobard. And he doesn't know where the voice came from, but now that doesn't really fucking matter because he's got this time capsule in front of him. And then he discovers that this time capsule isn't just for anyone. This is a time capsule for the Flash. It's got Flash memorabilia in there, but most importantly, it has a Flash suit in there. But speaking of the Flash, we'll be right back in the Flash after a word from our sponsors. Well, why the long face, Brendan?
Just looking for a podcast to listen to.
Oh, I get it. Well, looking for you, I have the perfect podcast in mind. The Superhero Homies podcast.
The superhero who?
The Superhero Homies, silly. The Superhero Homies podcast is full of cool, awesome nerd content that's just for you.
For me?
Yeah, if you like superhero movies or comic books or cool superhero TV shows or more, the Superhero Homies podcast is just for you. But here's the secret. You have to tell all your friends and family about it.
Why wouldn't I?
Why wouldn't you indeed? The Superhero Homies podcast thrives off of its listeners, so we need people just like you to share their word, and it can help you in all aspects of your life.
It can help me?
Yeah.
Will it help me put down a payment on my car? Will it help me bring back my dead dog?
Well...
It helped me bring back my wife that said that she doesn't love me anymore. My house is
shut the fuck up, silly. Here's how the podcast can really help you. It can help you develop better social skills. It can help you learn more cool nerd content and factoids. And it can help you be a real trooper and a homie supreme. Besides, the more people you tell about the Superhero Homies podcast, the more this podcast can grow.
You know, I have heard of this podcast now that I think of it.
Oh?
I've heard that the host is a huge dick.
What? Well, all right. And we're back. Big thank you to the sponsors. I highly suggest you guys do what they say. They sound like they mean business. Tell all your friends and family about the podcast. That really helps us out a lot. Now, where was I? Oh, yeah. Eobard, Reverse Flash, Flashpoint, one-shot comic books, superhero homies. Eobard finds a time capsule, and within this time capsule is one of the Flash's suits, like the red suit that the Scarlet Speedster is known to wear. The reason why this is so important for Eobard is that he now has that missing link. That suit has traces of the Speed Force, and he's able to essentially reverse engineer the traces of Speed Force from that suit to replicate the Speed Force. So now he's done it. Eobard Thawne has finally found a way to gain access to the Speed Force. And what does he do? He does what any person would do, obviously. He keeps it for himself. What do you think he was going to do with it? And with that, he dons the suit that he found as well. And then he goes out and he saves people. He's a hero now. And so this story has a great happy ending. He's out there saving people's lives and making the world a better place. Let's ignore the fact that the people he's saving, he is also putting them in danger unbeknownst to them. For example, this one lady accidentally stumbled off of a building after seeing a weird blur and feeling something push her. Thankfully, though, the Flash was there to save her. Isn't that awesome? See, Eobard can be a great guy. But the last thing that we see here in this one shot is it's Eobard Thawne having a huge shit-eating grin on his face, just grinning ear to ear, happy as can be. Probably for the first time in his miserable life, this man is happy. He's wearing the Flash's suit. He's got the Speed Force. He has become like his idol. This man is happy. And he says, "My name is Eobard Thawne, the fastest man alive. I'm the Flash." But off in the distance, we see another familiar figure. If you guys haven't figured it out by now, the man in yellow with the glowing red eyes is Reverse Flash. But how could that be? How could Reverse Flash be there if Thawne has been the main character in this whole story? Reverse Flash, to a degree, has always been a paradox. Now, as we're going to get to in the Flashpoint story, the degree of the type of paradox he's been is altered after Flashpoint, because now after Flashpoint he is a untethered paradox. But prior to Flashpoint, there's still some limitations set upon Eobard, but he's still a paradox nonetheless. The negative Speed Force gives Eobard access to powers and certain talents that admittedly Barry and Wally in the gang, they don't have access to. They can't do. And one of those things is being able to move freely through time so easily, so damn easily. So if you guys pick up on the context clues here in this clever little one shot, you'll come away realizing that Eobard had to go back in time to construct the circumstances that would allow him to come in contact with this time capsule that has the Flash's suit in it. You even maybe come across the idea that maybe the Reverse Flash put that capsule there and put the stuff in the capsule. Maybe Reverse Flash had to orchestrate it so that this version of himself never had a brother to distract him, that his parents never got in the way, that Professor Drake or anyone else never got in the way, that Rose, the only love of his life, didn't get in the way. He had to make sure that the chessboard was set perfectly. I think it's interesting for me because of the timing of this. You know, reading or rereading this story, it's a really good one shot. Whenever I read anything Flash related, I kind of like to hover back to this just to kind of refresh myself with the origins of Eobard Thawne, the Reverse Flash, Professor Zoom, whatever you want to call them. It's always good going back to this for me, but doing it again here was really interesting because just a few months ago, I had to do the same thing for Kang the Conqueror in preparation for Ant-Man 3 Quantumania. Kang the Conqueror is another big, bad, serious time traveling entity. And I wonder how much, if any, influence one of those characters played on the other. I'm not sure who was created first. I was going to assume that Kang was created first, but maybe not. But who knows? I think that there's been enough retcons with Reverse Flash that one could probably assume that there's maybe some influence from Kang the Conqueror. I don't know. There's a lot of I don't want to call it thievery. What's a nice word for thievery? There's a lot of admiring in the comic book industry, but there's also a lot of coincidence. Immediately, there's some things that are just so fucking coincidental, but things that couldn't have been stolen. I always talk about like Doom Patrol versus X-Men or Man Thing versus Swamp Thing. Like there's just some weird coincidences in comic books, and then maybe there are some borrowed ideas. I don't know. They are both very interesting time travelers, though, who have a penchant for fucking around and finding out sometimes. But as far as Reverse Flash goes, in the final moments here of this book, because the final lines here I think are very important. So we see on one side of the panel Eobard Thawne discovering how to utilize the Speed Force, wearing the red Flash suit, going around quote unquote saving people who had a brother, then didn't have a brother, who had parents who wanted to help him, then didn't have any parents at all, they died, then who, had a professor who was in the way, then the professor wasn't in the way, who had a love interest, then didn't have a love interest. So we have all these cool little paradoxes / retelling of his life story in order to fit the conditions that allow him to become the Scarlet Speedster of the 25th century. And then we have also this figure working in the background that, of course, has been the Reverse Flash. One of them is extremely happy, having the time of his life, and the other one is Reverse Flash. And the Reverse Flash version of Eobard, who has been pulling the strings this whole time, he's looking on at himself, running, smiling, happy, and he says, "Your happiness won't last. Barry Allen took everything from us, and now we'll take everything from Barry." And as he says this, there's like this super fucking menacing look on Reverse Flash's face. And then there's one of those anger tears that falls down. You know those anger tears. You ever seen someone cry? Or hell, maybe even one of you homies yourselves. Have you been so fucking mad and frustrated that you cried? I think that for people like Reverse Flash, that's got to hit differently, right? Because here's a man who can do anything and who can go anywhere, but he can't stop Barry. Or let me rephrase that. At this point in time in comic book history, he cannot kill Barry. He is still, at this point in the canon, tethered to Barry. Because if he kills Barry, then that kills the Speed Force. Barry is the generator of the Speed Force. It's important to remember that. Without Barry, at this point in the comic books, there is no Speed Force. And if Barry doesn't have the Speed Force, then Eobard never has the motivation to study to become the Flash or to tap into a Speed Force. There's none of that. And so at this point in the comic book history, Eobard needs Barry Allen. So he can torture Barry, he can make life a living hell for Barry, but he can't kill him. It would be interesting one day for me to do a comparison, right? To maybe just do a listing of perfect comic book pairing with heroes and villains. Like Reverse Flash and the Flash, Batman and Joker, Bullseye and Daredevil. Like who has like just the or I guess another one, Green Goblin and Spider Man. Like who has just the worst fucking villain to deal with? That'd be a lot of fun because they all have been all these heroes, I should say, have been put through the fucking ringer dealing with their shitty fucking villains. Uh, so I went way longer on that Reverse Flash one shot than I intended to. So I'm probably going to split this up into two sections. So before we wrap up here, though, I do want to still talk a little bit about the road to Flashpoint. So that is another story altogether. The road to Flashpoint. And so we'll talk about this one, and then we'll wrap things up here. The road to Flashpoint, I thought it was a good read. I didn't enjoy it as much as the Reverse Flash one shot, but I still thought that this was a pretty cool read and something interesting to take a look at before we get to Flashpoint. And the thing about the road to Flashpoint story is, as interesting as the story is, it's more of the character dynamic of Barry Allen that's really driving the story forward. So I'm not going to be as detail oriented with this one as I was with the Reverse Flash story, simply because the details for this one, while they are cool and they do matter, again, it's mostly about the mind state of Barry Allen. I think that that's really the driving point here of this story, especially once you read Flashpoint and you come to that kind of epic conclusion at the end of it. Understanding the road to Flashpoint really helps you understand what happens to lead to Flashpoint, obviously. So let's get to it here. So at this point in the Flash canon, that sounds like a cool ass weapon, a Flash cannon. But no, where we're at this point in the Flash comic books, Barry Allen has returned. Barry Allen returns in one of the issues of Final Crisis. After having been gone, for, 20 years? Over 25 years? Barry Allen was gone for a long fucking time, folks. And I think that's really been something that's been understated. I don't think a lot of people really think about Barry being gone that long, because ultimately an entire generation, my generation, and honestly, maybe even a lot of Gen Zers even missed out on Barry. A lot of what people my age kind of know about Barry, and also hell, people even slightly older than me as well. The things that we know about Barry are things that we had to learn from reading older comic books. If we were reading anything current, or if we were even watching The Flash on a cartoon like Justice League or the sister sequel, Justice League Unlimited, then we were watching and learning more about Wally. The comic books were centered on Wally because he's the one who took up the mantle after Barry Allen died in Crisis on Infinite Earths. Barry Allen making that heroic sacrifice to stop the Anti-Monitor, and doing so straight up fucking killed him. And there was an episode that Kevin and I did on the podcast some months ago. It was for my top 10 favorite comic book deaths, which sounds very morbid, but it was a lot. It was a lot more cool than it was morbid, because there's this whole thing about death not mattering in comic books, and I'm the opposite. I think that deaths, when they're done properly, can absolutely matter in comic books. They can move a story. And while obviously there are a lot of deaths in comic books that are like, what the fuck, why did this even happen? This is so dumb. I wanted to show that there are a lot of deaths in comic books as well that really, really stand out and are really poignant and mean something. I think I mentioned Martian Manhunter's death, and hell, that was in Final Crisis. Obviously there's the death of Superman. I believe I mentioned Steve Rogers' death. Um, obviously there was 10 of them because I did a list of 10, but that was a really fun episode for me to kind of put together. And I don't want to give away too many more of the heavy hitters, but there were some good ones in there. Silver Surfer's death. Oh my goodness! If you guys haven't read Silver Surfer Requiem, then stop what you're fucking doing right now and read that story and have a good cry. All right. Anyways, back to Road to Flashpoint here. I've really been prolonging talking about this this story. Uh, yeah. So Road to Flashpoint right now. Barry Allen is back, and we have our other species as well, such as Bart Allen. We have who's Bart Allen, who was Kid Flash at this time. Wally West, who is also still functioning as the Flash. I mean, you can't just write out Wally West. I mean, he is the Flash, and Barry Allen just happens to be back now. We have Jay Garrick, the OG Flash, and then also we have Wally's kids, who I mean they don't really play a part in the story, but they're there. And we also have our supporting cast of Iris West, Barry's wife, who is extremely worried about Barry because Barry has been very distant. And we have Barry's ex-flame, Patty Spivot. She comes back. For those of you who have seen the Flash TV show, I watched, I think, the first 3 seasons of it. I watched up until Savitar came in the scene, and then I kind of trailed off after that. So whenever Savitar showed up, is when I started to peace out. Anyways, Patty Spivot, that character was actually in the TV show for a season. And if she looks familiar to you, then that's probably because you recognize her from The Boys. She plays Billy Butcher's wife. So the more you know. What we end up seeing here is, and to me, whether it's the crutch of the story, is Barry Allen is distant. Like he's back. Everyone is happy to have him back. He's been back, for a little while now, so he should have time to be acclimated to life and society. And he's surrounded by so many loved ones and so many other people who understand what it's like to be a speedster and to utilize the speed force. He's not alone. So why is he being so damn distant? He's being so cold. There's a family outing that's had, and all the speedsters are there, and all their families are there, and everybody is having a good time, but Barry isn't there. Barry's working the case. And the case he's working is that of a superhero, or a superhero, that's a stretch. That pun is kind of intended because there's this kid with superpowers who gains superpowers, calling himself the elongated kid. And of course, that is fashioned after the elongated man, Raph Dibny, who has powers to stretch, thank Reed Richards. He was also in the Flash TV show. But this kid seems to have snuck into Raph Dibny's lab and maybe took some of the formula that Raph used to gain his powers. And now this kid has given himself the powers of elongated man. But what's interesting is that he's been killed. Barry is a forensic scientist, for those of you who didn't know. He works, in the forensic department. But what's interesting about this kid's death is that he is not a kid. He was just a kid, but upon death and upon retrieving his body at the scene of the crime, he is an extremely old man. This is something they don't figure out until they run a DNA sample on the kid. So what in the fuck? How did that happen? How did he die? This is just a straight up fucking mystery. So while Barry is missing the family outing, and he's missing the family outing on purpose because he doesn't want to be around them right now, at least he has a good reason. Barry suggests that they bring in like the best analysis that he's ever seen, who was Patty Spivot. Again, that's one of his old flames from back in the day. And they tell him that she's out of town, that she's moved a long time ago, and that she's not even in that line of work anymore. But Barry is very persistent that they do so. So long story short here, what ends up happening is that as Barry is trying to avoid spending time with his loved ones, he comes across this anomaly, or maybe Barry's the anomaly here. It's hard to say, but he comes across this other speedster, and but this speedster is different. This speedster is wearing like a different kind of suit Barry hasn't seen before, and this speedster has on a helmet and it's on a cool ass Tron looking motorcycle. And Barry's able to catch up with this guy, and they stop. And Barry asks, "Who the hell are you?" And the speedster takes off his helmet, and wouldn't you know it, the speedster is Barry. So what ends up happening here is that this speedster is Barry Allen from another universe. Technically, in DC canon, there's 52 other universes. You know, DC loves that number. And this Barry is basically a time cop, and he doesn't technically have access to the Speed Force in the same way that our Barry Allen does, but he uses the Speed Force via his motorcycle to travel to other timelines, essentially to fix time anomalies. So whenever there's someone in a timeline that shouldn't be there, they have the opportunity to royally fuck up a timeline, and that can end up destroying that timeline altogether. And so what this Barry Allen, time cop Barry Allen, is trying to do is find that anomaly that he detected in this universe. By the way, his name is Hot Pursuit. It's a shitty name, and I put off saying his name as long as I could, but you guys need to know this Barry Allen has a very bad name of Hot Pursuit. I'm like, damn, did somebody just play Need for Speed and said, let's name him Hot Pursuit? You know, listen, they can't all be bangers, all right? They can't all be, you know, super cool names, all right? Some of them gotta fail, you know. No one bats 1,000. Long story short here, this Hot Pursuit comes across Bart Allen, and at first doesn't think anything of it. But as the story goes on, you start to get the feeling that Bart is the anomaly, because technically Bart Allen is not from this exact time period. He is a descendant, I think actually a grandkid of Barry Allen, who was a speedster and came back in time to learn from Barry. So Barry is supposed to be his mentor, but Barry hasn't been spending time with Bart at all, and Bart feels like Barry has been so distant and so cold because of him. And so Bart feels like, okay, so you don't want to hang out with me. This is all my fault. Blah, blah, blah. Teenage angst. You guys get it. But Hot Pursuit is still trying to find out exactly who this time anomaly is. So before he acts, he wants to be sure. There is another superpowered person who is found dead and greatly aged. And at this point, people don't know what to think of it. Patty Spivot, she's coming to town, and she's coming to town to help. Yeah, sure, kind of, but she's really come back for Barry. She wants back on that Barry dick. I don't know if those two ever hooked up like that. I'm pretty sure they did. I mean, why not? But she wants back on it. Barry is, of course, a married man, but she helps Barry with this case anyway. They're going to be friends, whatever. And they notice that there is weird motorcycle tread marks on the ground near the dead body. So now we kind of have an idea of what's going on here. So you think that this Hot Pursuit guy was here to help. Now you're thinking maybe this Hot Pursuit guy is on his own agenda altogether, and he's out here killing these people. But for what purpose? But before they leave the scene of the crime, they actually find a kid hiding in a storage unit nearby. And then they realize that this kid is in shock. He's not saying a word. He looks scared as shit. This kid was a witness to the crime. And so they need to take this kid, not just for protection, but also to see if they can get this kid to speak, to give them some kind of information as to what happened. This kid doesn't say shit, right? But he only reacts to Patty, and it's not anything grand, but he's the only person that, she's the only person that this kid feels comfortable with. And so she decides to watch over this kid back at the lab, whereas Barry continues to try to track down Hot Pursuit. God, I hate saying that name, Hot Pursuit. It's just such a bad name. Anyway, but Barry doesn't have to search too long because Bart catches up with Barry, and this is really when Bart and Barry, they have a very unconstructive conversation. And Barry is being all Batman types of angst, and Bart is being all typical teenage, I don't want to understand or listen to you. And before they can even really get things settled, Bart takes the fuck off. Barry goes after him. And then Hot Pursuit joins the chase and tries to fucking kill Bart. Damn near does kill Bart. Barry's like, what the fuck are you doing? Hot Pursuit says, this is the time anomaly. Like, these people are dying because of him, and this universe is eventually this timeline is going to unravel because of him. Bart does not belong here. I have to take him out. And Barry isn't having any of that, you know. Well, I'm sure that Bart can be maybe an annoying little shit sometimes. He's not bad. Bart is no Damien, okay? He's not that fucking annoying. But I mean, come on, a kid speedster would definitely be something that grinds your gears. Barry is trying to stop Hot Pursuit, but Hot Pursuit has a few tricks up his sleeve. Like, he can absorb Speed Force energy as much as he wants. So there is no upper limit to how much of this energy Hot Pursuit can absorb. And he even tells Barry as much. He goes, you can't overload my suit or my bike with your Speed Force. I can take as much as you have. And so now this kind of negates the whole speed factor, right? And I love Barry's solution. His solution is, all right, then I'm just lay you the fuck out. And so Barry just cold clocks Hot Pursuit in an attempt to help Bart. But it's in this instant where Hot Pursuit, he gets like a little ding there on his Speed Force anomaly detector device. And then he realizes that Bart is not the anomaly. We go back over to the lab where Patty is still doing work. And the little kid comes into the room, and Patty doesn't think anything of it. This little kid begins to smile or smirk. Then this little kid begins to vibrate and age. And when he's done, this little kid is actually none other than the fucking Reverse Flash. Yes, the fucking Reverse Flash. Speaking of Reverse Flash, we'll be back in the Reverse Flash after a word from this sponsor. Whether you're catching waves at the beach, bowling with your favorite group of friends, or stealing time at work, the Superhero Homies podcast has got your back. With nearly 1,000 hours in content, we're sure to keep you engaged for hours, like 1,000 of them, with our engaging, thought-provoking, mind-blowing discussions about comic books. Wait, hold on, what's that? You say you already listened to the Superhero Homies podcast? Well, how about Patreon? For $3 a month, $3 non-superhero movie reviews. Hell yeah. Video game discussions. Slap my ass. And now, you get early access to new episodes. You gotta be fucking kidding me. Stop fucking around and go to patreon.com/superhero homies because you deserve it. That's right, you do deserve it, guys. Go to patreon.com/superhero homies. That's a very significant way you guys can help me and this podcast continue to grow. And it is greatly appreciated. And also on top of it, you guys get some really cool content. Our next Patreon episode will be on the 90s Street Fighter movie. I know you guys love that one, right? So while the movie may or may not be great, I can promise you this, our review of it will be. So be sure to check that out. Anyways, back here at the podcast, Reverse Flash has just made himself known. Reverse Flash has been hiding in plain sight this entire time. He has been the one causing the anomaly, killing people via... So this is what I meant earlier when I said that the negative Speed Force can grant abilities that the typical Speed Force cannot. And this is what makes Reverse Flash so damn threatening. And this is also an easy way to kind of retcon the things that Reverse Flash can do because he's continuously discovering new abilities that he has. And this is one of them, being able to steal time from other people. And so he's been stealing time from other people to lower his own age to make himself inconspicuous. He can essentially shapeshift now. Different ages, different sizes, different looks and appearances. He can do that shit now. Fucking wild. And yeah, so this whole time anomaly now has been made known to Hot Pursuit, and Hot Pursuit, Barry and Bart, they all beeline towards where this anomaly is at. And they have this big blowout fight with Reverse Flash. And the coolest / most disturbing moment maybe in this entire book is when Reverse Flash has Hot Pursuit dead to rights. Hot Pursuit still has on the helmet at this point. And somewhere or another, the helmet comes off and Reverse Flash has Hot Pursuit, and he looks at him and he goes, "Barry Allen, but you're not my Barry, are you? You're a different Barry." And as he's looking at Hot Pursuit, he has him dead to rights, can kill this man any moment he feels like. He's looking at Hot Pursuit with so much reverence, and like he is just savoring this moment. And Eobard even says, "I wish I could make this moment last forever." And then he proceeds to straight up kill Hot Pursuit. That's got to be cathartic for Eobard Thawne. The one thing that he's wanted to do but could never do. He technically killed Barry Allen. So the bad news is he killed one of the good guys. The good news is we don't have to keep saying the name Hot Pursuit without laughing. Because it's a trash ass name. Okay. All right. Okay, we're good. With Hot Pursuit dead, it is now up to Barry and Bart to put a stop to Reverse Flash. And they start putting a beating on this guy. But Reverse Flash does get away and he runs into a crowd. Barry goes after him, but he can't find him because he's, again, hiding in plain sight. Barry even says, "Damn it, he could be any of these people." And then we see Reverse Flash disguising himself as like an older man, and he hobbles off into the crowd. Now, what was the point behind what Eobard was doing here? It was just that. He was just discovering newer abilities that he has, planning and plotting his next play against Barry. Eobard has very bad intentions in mind for Barry Allen. But the Reverse Flash reveal, as cool as that was in this book, to me, that's not the best moment. Well, technically, the best moment is when Reverse Flash kills Hot Pursuit. That's got to be the best moment in the book. But Another one of my favorite moments, though, is here at the end. There's just we see Barry and his wife Iris. They're conversating as married people tend to do, and Barry is clearing the air. He's just making it known that, okay, look, I know I've been cold, I've been distant, and you don't deserve that. No one else in the family deserves that, and I'm sorry. But I just need you to do me a favor and give me one more day. And Iris, she reluctantly agrees. And, he does also tell her that this has a lot to do with learning, recently learning that his mother died at the hands of Reverse Flash, because for so long, Barry didn't know how his mom died. And come to find out, it was Eobard who killed her. Eobard went back in time and killed Barry's mom. And so that really just kind of, that's shaken Barry to his core. And in a previous issue with The Flash, he saw like a mirror dimension where his mom, not only was she alive, but she was age appropriate, as if she were alive today. And that really fucked with Barry. And so what Barry's telling to his wife Iris is that, he's gone through all that, and he's, he doesn't want to miss anything else. And he just feels like there was something that he could have done for his mom. And there's just so much going on with his mom right now, and so much that he's learned and so much that he's seen. He just needs one more day, because that one more day, that tomorrow, is his mom's birthday. And at the end of this book, we see Barry the next day on his mom's birthday. He's at her gravesite. And you get the idea that this is something that maybe he does probably every year. And yeah, he's mourning his mom. And you also get the idea that he may not be the only one there, that maybe Reverse Flash is somewhere also nearby. And that is where this book ends. That is the road to Flashpoint. Now, considering how this book ends and how Flashpoint starts, it is kind of like a smooth transition. But yeah, I'm not gonna discuss the entirety of Flashpoint here tonight. That would be fucking killer. That would be too much. It is already late as hell here. I got a late start. Fucking work and jobs and shit ruining my day. But I've actually had a lot of fun talking here to all of you, and mostly to myself tonight. Doing the solo dolo, no co-host here. So, talking for an hour and a half straight is something that only narcissists and podcasters do. I will let you guys determine which of the two I am. Maybe I'm both. But there's still so much fun shit here to discuss. Like, really, there's a lot of meat to Flashpoint that I really can't wait to get into. I've been reading, actually, this time around, instead of the Flashpoint trade paperback, this movie slash set of reviews I'm doing is giving me an excuse to dig into the Flashpoint omnibus, which is fucking enormous. It's got to be like 1,500 plus pages. And this gives me access to everything that I've discussed tonight, the Flashpoint story, and then like all 56 tie-ins. And those have been so fucking interesting. And I'll talk to you guys more about that next time, because I think like the logistics of the book really interest me. And I understand that that's probably not interesting to a lot of people, but the layout and the mapping of the book is just chef's kiss. Really good layout. And the tie-ins here are different. And what I mean by that is, in most event books, the tie-ins are fine. They're there if you want them. But the tie-ins to this book really, truly give me more information to the world of Flashpoint. And so after reading some of these, especially the Aquaman and Wonder Woman tie-ins, really help paint the picture more of the world in Flashpoint. And of course, those Batman tie-ins in Flashpoint are also really fucking good too. So there's a lot of that I want to talk about. I'll be back in just a little bit to review that as well. Guys, thank you guys again for listening again, and for sticking around with me here as I talk to myself into the abyss of this microphone. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this. I had a blast doing the research for this and doing this episode. But yeah, let me know what you guys think. Let me know what you guys think of the Flash movie if you've seen it. This movie has been just such a mixed bag amongst so many people who've seen it. So curious. Also, I'm very surprised that I was able to go this long by myself. I plan on keeping this thing kind of short and concise. I thought that I could discuss all three of those books within an hour. I was wrong. I am very long winded. I apologize for nothing though. But I will see you guys again next time. I had a blast with this, guys. But don't worry, part two will be back in a flash.